Muhammad. I will be joined shortly by my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. Uh, Tonight, we're being joined by our resident legal, I shouldn't say legal, I should say insurance expert, Mr. Tommy Rook is joining us tonight. Going to be a very interesting show. Looking forward to the discussion. A lot of developments going on in the industry with different states raising insurance minimums and all of things of that nature. So we definitely timely discussion to be had with Tommy. But if before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, if you would do us a huge favor, please like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you find anything entertaining or helpful, or knowing someone that may benefit from this information that we are discussing tonight, by all means, please like, share, and subscribe to the show. Leave us a comment if you have a question or concerns or something that you would like to see us cover in a future topic. By all means, drop us a comment in the comment section as well. Of course, tonight's show will be pre-recorded. We are doing that. We have some schedule conflicts that have been popping up here and there, but we always try to go back and read the comments and listen to any comments and concerns that you guys may have. So if you would do that for us, that would help us out tremendously. And with that being said, and without any further ado, let me welcome my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow, to the show. Good morning, Chuck. How are you?
I'm good, Rico. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Looking forward to today's discussion. Like I said, it's a very timely discussion that we get Tommy back on the show.
It's always timely.
So I guess we won't belabor the point too long, and we'll go ahead and welcome our good friend and our resident, I affectionately call him our resident insurance expert, Mr. Tommy Rook, to the show. Good morning, Tommy. How are you?
I'm fine, Rico, and Chuck. Glad to see you guys. Residents is another word, but experts, I've just been doing it for a long time and have heard a lot of stories and tried to express of it. It's tough in this marketplace.
I think you've earned the moniker Professor Truck Insurance. You have come by it honestly.
Well, that's because I'm the son of a trucker. That helps.
Well, Tommy, I want to kind of jump right into it, Tommy. Earlier this week, I believe, New Jersey came down and raised the minimum insurance for everybody involved. We were talking a little bit before we came on air. How is that going to affect people in New Jersey primarily, and how does that affect people in the industry as a whole that may be running or delivering into New Jersey?
Rico and Chuck, if I read the law right, and I have, it is only applied to intrastate trucks. If you read the law itself that was signed, it implies that you would have interstate trucks too. But there's a federal law called the Safety Lube Act of 2005 that introduced the UCR, the Uniform Carrier Registration System. Right. And it clearly states that no state can impose a financial limit for interstate hauling. So they cannot require, based on that law, this limit to be applied to any interstate trucker. And all that's required right now in interstate is $750,000. Of course, this is going to be up to a court system. So the only business that would be affected by that, as I read the law, is intrastate operation, meaning people domiciled in New Jersey delivering property in New Jersey. Now, that might be an interstate trucker who has separate authority or separate operations in New Jersey, like between Newark and Atlantic City. It would apply to those people. The only thing that they might wrinkle around or try around, if you have to buy an apportioned tag in New Jersey, there might be a way that they could impose that federal limit on that, but that would also be contrary to what the law is. Of course, all the laws are interpreted by the courts. So we'll just have to live with that part. But I don't see practically how you can enforce that law for an interstate trucker. I mean, you got to have some kind of credentialing here. They can't stop the truck at the border and say, let me look at an ID card. So you'd have to have some kind of credential, meaning obtain a New Jersey number and so that's why the license plate would be the only method that I could think of where they even could enforce this. The problem I have is that this is paralleling to the Congress suggestion that we need to have $5 million. Now, this $5 million is a number that's up in the air. It is looking at the inflation numbers from when the 750 was originally applied. It was a part of the Motor Carriers Act of 1980. That stair-stepped the limits from 300,000 for 5 years. It went to 500,000. And then January 1st, 1985, it went to the 750, as well as imposed first off the $1 million for light hazard and the $5 million for the extra hazard commodity, and introduced the MCS 90. That's what that act did back in those days. And they're trying to put an inflation number on that 750,000 up
Right.
to get to the 5 million. There was a study in the MAP 21 Act that studied this, and they studied. It was kind of weird because after this came down, I reread some of the previous laws, and it said that it might be needed, but they decided not to do it. So this is a part here, and they did a study and found that all but a few, 1 or 2% of the cases settle within the 750 or the money available. This is before all these nuclear verdicts, though. That study was done before these nuclear verdicts hit the highway. So I'm worried about, or concerned about, or speculating that this might give Congress a benchmark to raise the limit to something less than 5 million, but a number of $1 million, $1.5 million part of it. What that means to most insurers out there is most of y'all carrying $1 million already. So it won't affect.
Minimum, yeah.
If it moves to $1.5 million, the basic rate is about 25 to 30% of the first million. Why? Because the projections of the cases don't get over the $1 million. This is why it's discounted. So it would affect your coverage, your premium from about 25 to 30% increase on what you're paying now for liability coverage. There is some speculation, though, from some lawyers, is that they need more limits to get the claim settled to avoid these nuclear verdicts. So there is a little push, even on the legal side. I need some more dollars to settle it, to get out of these cases, and that is an incentive there. So it's all up in there, Rico. Something to look forward to. I do believe that it's going to be addressed. I think there's going to be a study. I cannot predict the outcome of the study, but it would not surprise me that they went at least to $1 million, which wouldn't hurt many people, but they might choose this $1.5 million or $2 million to be a compromise at the federal level. Again, the New Jersey just is affecting intrastate New Jersey, truckers domicile in New Jersey. I don't see any way it can affect anybody who has interstate authority going through New Jersey.
Okay.
That's
know what,
interesting.
Tom, the way I look at it, I don't think 750 is nearly enough today. I wouldn't operate a tractor trailer in Canada or United States with just $750,000 liability. What's your thoughts?
I agree totally with that, Chuck. I think you need more. It depends on how you protect your assets. And this is the structure of the companies, which is another subject, where you want to make sure you have all your assets out of your transportation company as possible. Brokerage, property, even trucks, to the sense that you either lease your trucks or have a debt against your trucks. Even if debt is for a separate company. So at one point in time, the plaintiff's attorneys will have to decide for these larger cases to accept your policy limits of $1 million or keep fighting and get a judgment against the trucker. But if you can't collect that judgment, then why fight it except the $1 million? This is the silver bullet of how to avoid these nuclear verdicts, and that's have no assets in the transportation company that are not needed. Meaning terminals, property, anything.
You know what, Tom? In all honesty, with the way they work today, even if you do everything the way you're mentioning, and Hank Seaton has been talking about this before, and so have a lot of other experts. Take your real estate, put that in a separate company. If you have a terminal, take your rolling assets, put them in a separate company. Then you have your brokerage. That's got to be a separate company under MAP 21. And then you keep your trucks under your transport company under another name. So you're really leasing your trucks from your leasing for the transport company. But the problem still comes back to now, they're able to pierce the corporate veil, and they can go after directors. So it
Well,
still comes back to I know they've been doing that in Canada to some degree. If there's malpractice involved here,
well,
in cases
the,
like that.
the problem, Chuck, is that most people who do this only do it halfway, only set it up and then don't follow their own rules. Don't have separate bank accounts. Don't have legitimate leases. Don't have legitimate rentals. Don't have supervising. Those brokers, those people involved, those other entities, transportation, and leasing companies, brokerage companies, and the real estate shouldn't have anything to do with the transportation company.
Right.
It's a separate director here, so you can't bring those in because of their negligence there. And you got D&O coverage, but it's hard to bring a broker in if they're doing things prudent on that. So this is why they need lawyers like Hank and Chuck. Hank and others to help them set it up properly and then follow it. And it's not easy done. I did this with one of my clients, and it takes a while because they were buying equipment. It took 2 or 3 years to get all the equipment out of the entity's name. This was a manufacturer. This wasn't a true trucking company, as then buying and leasing equipment here. So it took a while. You had to recapture some depreciation and things like that. But if you're listening to us, that's the number one thing you can do. Don't operate as an individual. Operate as an LLC or sub-S corporation. And then put everything you can out of that transportation company, and then have separate checking accounts, separate phone numbers, separate email address for that transportation company, and make sure it's arm's length between each other. Just treat it like it's owned by somebody else.
Great advice. It's sage wisdom, and it could save, even if you're operating 1 or 2 trucks, it's still worthwhile because it helps divert some of that liability away from you. And, unfortunately, the more miles you operate, the greater chance you have of having something happen. Whether it's your fault or not does not matter anymore. They'll still find you. If somebody loses their life, you still could be, even if and I've seen cases where the truck driver did nothing wrong and was hit by a drunk driver that had been smoking marijuana, that was driving the wrong way on a road. And my friend still had, his insurance company still had to pay $600,000.
Let me address that in 3 ways, Chuck, in this part of it. The first part of it, you're absolutely right. It depends on how much damage is done. And the study that ATRI did is, and your insurance cannot pick the car that hit. If you have a child in it, you double the amount of the judgment, the family. So this is sheer luck. The second thing is, this is where I'm a great advocate. I know that some of our listeners are going to push back. You got to have cameras. You got to have the cameras front, back, and in the rear, all the way around, because that's the only way you can show that you weren't at fault in this marketplace. And that's why it's so important to have those cameras, and not just the GoPros you buy at the truck stops. Well, you need to spend the extra money and talk to your insurance company to see if they'll subsidize some of it, whereas the cameras was captured on the cloud. So when the accident happens, you can look at that and you can show to the officer when they write up their first report exactly what happened. Case that I was listening to on the Road Dog radio show when I was on the other day is that this was a trucker who was doing slow. We're talking about the speed limiters. That's another subject here. And the car went around them, then brake checked them and ran into them. And the officers, when they looked at it, they said the truck ran into the side of that car. They were able to show the video that they didn't and got the report changed. There's also some tort reform, Florida being the landmark tort reform, which says if you're more than 50% liable, 50% or more liable, you can't collect anything. Texas tort reform says that if you're not negligent, you cannot introduce these other factors involved in it. So this is why these cameras are there to prove it. And I understand the privacy and I understand all that. But I would talk to these cameras. If you're not doing anything wrong, why not have the cameras? We're not going to look at you sleeping. Put something over it. That's when the truck is moving so that you can adjust, that you can make sure that when the crash happens, all the facts are out. The second part about it is if you show you're at fault, then the insurance companies like that because then we settle the claim. We get out of this is when we do these other things and start not fighting. So it's a deal to fight or not fight this thing. The last thing is all these big judgments. I'll use the $1 billion judgment happened in Florida. Everybody's heard about that.
Yeah.
Chuck, 900,000 that was punitive damage that wasn't collected, Bo. I know the company had already paid the $1 million before all this happened. It's all
Right.
there for a lawyer getting a poster and advertisement. It's not collectible. Now, again, the Warner case for $100 million, yes. Why? Warner is valuable. Warner has assets. They went after Warner. And that case did finally settle after repeat at $100 million. That's the one that's a poster child of what was wrong. This is when a four-wheeler crossed the median, hit the truck head on, and got somebody killed, somebody maimed this. And the argument here, getting back to operational rights, is that Warner's rules said you don't travel in bad weather, and the plaintiff attorney was proving it was bad weather. Therefore, that's what the case is. They should have been off the highway if they followed their own rules. Therefore, they wouldn't hurt somebody, even though they didn't even talk about why the four-wheeler should be on the highway and not the truck. So you have rules, you got to live with your rules. If you have driver hiring standards, you got to hire within those standards. Anytime you hire outside of those standards or operate a truck outside of your rules, then you're more vulnerable for the plaintiff's attorney to bring these things up. So just how you operate, how you set your company up, how you operate is the defense you have for these big judgments.
Man, I tell you,
that's my
Tom. Once somebody, God forbid, has a crash, they normally, unless it's a mild one, they got to get towed away from the scene, and then the heavy wreckers come in. And that's a whole other thing going on right now. I'm hearing some of these tow bills, and they're insane. This is a great example of highway robbery. What's going on with some of these wrecking services?
Chuck, absolutely. In fact, everybody needs to go back and look at their last week's public information about trucking, and you'll find even FMCSA, even the director of the DOT has come out to do a study of predatory towing, and they cited a lot of stuff. Maryland they passed a law about predatory towing, and it's absolute a scourge on this industry and a scourge on physical damage part of it and cargo, because when a wreck happens, they call the towing company that's on the rotation. That's non-consensual towing. Towing company gets out there, they clean it up. They haul the car that the truck hit away. They haul the truck away. They haul the tractor away. They haul the cargo away. But they have to get rid of the debris, the cargo. They have to reload it. And so you got 4 or 5 different insurance companies involved in it. And these towing companies now holding those items at their yard, charging $150 to $200 a day until somebody pays it. This is the horrendous thing. So there's not much you can do about it. Here's the suggestion I have. First off, if you're ever in a crash, and if it's possible, have your own towing company. Set up towing companies. There's towing companies you can have your own. Some states will allow that. They have to get there within a reasonable period of time. But you want to have a towing company that you have arranged for. And there's a couple of those out there that like AAA. You can look at those up about truck towing companies that are legitimate here, or you set up a consortium or a referral service. If you can't, and the patrol officer, the officer calls their own, and the towing company comes up and asks you to sign something, don't sign anything. You didn't have them there. You didn't ask them to be there. You don't have to sign anything. This is where the study ATRI did. About 20% of the time, they called it consensual towing when it was non-consensual, because they got somebody to sign something once at the site. Thirdly, take pictures of everybody out there. How much towing? Use your cameras. How many towing companies? How many people are there? How many? What they're doing? What it takes to do? Videos. The more you can do that, and the witnesses, all the tags of the witnesses, and all this will help us to fight that thing. And then when the towing company goes, then in the looking at your coverage, you want to turn it in, but you want to make sure your cargo carrier, your liability carrier, and your physical damage carrier all talks about how to get those units out of their yard. There's something that in some states, if they're hauling the cargo, since the cargo is not owned by the insurer, they don't have a right to haul that cargo. So sometimes you might have to get an attorney or get a cargo carrier who understands the laws to get the cargo dismissed, even though tractor trailer is sitting there. But here's the thing. Hopefully, people don't really understand this, Chuck, but you mentioned the MAP 21 Act. Part of the MAP 21 Act was to study towing. Nobody did it at the federal level. They didn't do it. I mean, people forget that. Everybody thinks about the brokerage part, but that act was 200 pages long. There's a lot of stuff in that act, including speed limiters and things that we're dealing with, and the study with CSA that we're dealing with too in this area. But that's a concern you have to have. But you also need to check your towing coverage on your physical damage policy, because they're all different. You got everybody who writes physical damage. You got to ask your physical damage carrier, how do you pay towing bills? Do you pay it within the limits or additional to the limits? There's some out there will pay the repair plus the towing bill. Some of them will pay the repair up to and the towing bill, but no more than the limit of coverage that your premium is based on. Some companies actually put a towing endorsement on it, says we'll pay towing, but they limit it to $10,000. So you don't want that one. You want to go and you got to ask every one of your insurance carriers, how do they pay the towing bill? What you want to is the towing bill paid in additional to the property. There's a reason why the ISO form is misworded, and I actually have told ISO is the company that promulgates the forms that everybody uses, and they made a mistake how they do it, because they wrote it as if it's a different premium basis stated amount, which is typical property coverage, and they're going to adjust that form. I actually pointed that out, and they thanked me for pointing that out. And they're going to rewrite the forms to address how towing is exactly going to be paid. They didn't even know themselves the quandary that the insurance companies have, because the provision is to protect and preserve. Any of your property coverage, your homeowner's coverage, your building coverage says anything to protect the property is in addition to the limit. That's so the property doesn't get further damaged. Towing is a whole different world in this part of it. So the policy is not worded correctly in that manner. But the truckers right now need to ask your insurance company, how do they pay towing bills, and ask your cargo carriers. And when a crash happens, make sure your towing companies or your physical damage company and your cargo carrier get together to expedite the handling of the towing bill. Right now,
wouldn't it make sense though if there's not that many insurance companies in the United States and Canada that insure big trucks? Wouldn't it make sense for those companies to have people on? So if God forbid you call and you've had a crash, and they say, okay, we've got it covered, we're going to send ABC Towing because that's our guy in Missouri, and they send where the towing company has the relationship with the insurance company. Wouldn't that protect the trucker?
It will help the trucker, but you're not going to get the insurance companies. But that's what the other thing that you need to ask your physical damage carrier. Do you have a preferred towing company that we have to? Typically, it's a fee, like AAA, $25, $100, whatever it is. And that's worthwhile, Chuck, because that will also cover you for the non-crash towing too, breakdowns too. So there is a plus on that side. So again, not only ask your insurance, your physical damage carriers how they pay towing, but ask them if they have a preferred towing program that they can buy or refer them to.
I think what's happening though is that the officer on responding to the scene or whatever, a lot of times they're calling towing companies.
Oh yeah,
and whether or not there's of course, there's always been the long speculation that that's whoever they're calling is the brother-in-law or long lost uncle that has the towing company that comes out and it's kind of all a more draconian situation that's going on there. But when it comes down, we were talking earlier, Tommy, about you was telling me something about a captive that was going through some changes with their insurance.
Well, if you read the press, also happened last month. We had, I think I talked last time I talked a little bit about there's new trucking markets out there and they have IT tied to it. And some of the trucking companies were trying to use a couple of trucking companies use their big assets, their captives and those things, and to write other trucks than their own. Well, those have come up to a real problem. The one famous one out there reported to the FCCA, the financial part of it, about they lost millions of dollars on writing insurance for trucks other than their own, and it packed the stock market. It's just a tough market out there. Everybody thought they had a better mousetrap. technology, better selection. But Rico, you can't do but so much. I mean, that's part of it. And all this new technology is great, but we don't know what part of that technology is going to help us or not help us. And you get the right attorneys. And the problem with this is that we don't know when the $1 million case is going to have the $2 million case. So every insurance company who gets in the marketplace who are trying to be new ventures in this area, they've got to write enough premium to justify the crash or have enough assets sitting back there. And when the crash happens, and the only way you can do that is underprice it or don't be strict who you determine to write it. So this is the quagmire that they have. But there is a major insurance company who was writing trucking, but in June decided they're not going to write trucking anymore. And they were the third largest flyer provider of the 91X proof of coverage in the marketplace. Right, because they just came. And what happened is they write other businesses than trucking. They were making money in the other business, but not in trucking. And so they haven't figured out a way to write trucking insurance profitable. So it's a real, as Chuck said, as you said, it's a real special commodity out there, a real special part of it. And insurance, just so everybody understands, insurance is theory. Basically, insurance 101 is you take 100 risks that are very similar. You don't, of those 100 risks, only 3 or 4 of them are going to have a crash. Those crashes have to be paid by the whole 100. You don't ever collect unless you're the very large companies with 100 with 1,000 trucks that you pay out of your own money you put in for insurance.
Right.
You pool that money, so it depends on who you pool it with, and in the areas that you have that you share. So even though you have a good relationship, you have a smaller trucker, 4 or 5 unit trucker, even though you have a good history, positive start, you will have to have or anticipate some rate increases. The market function is, however.
Well, Tommy froze.
Hold on, we got him back.
Can you? Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. I just thought there is a difference broader than I ever seen, Chuck and Rico, between what is a preferred risk from insurance and what is not. Used to it was only maybe 5 or 10 points. Today it's 20, 30 points. And that based on CSA scores, the quality of drivers, how long the driver has been there, and what kind of technology you have on the trucks. Do you have the wingman? Do you have the cameras? Do you have these kind of stuff? This is where underwriters are now making a discretionary decision on what pool to put you in. And so the better you present yourselves and they're willing to share your LD information. I'm a big advocate of this. Why? Because it's showing you're doing everything right. It's showing the driver is not hard braking. Their drivers staying within the speed limit. This driver, if you're not doing that, then you're going to pay more for insurance. But if you can,
so you should, that's only fair. You know what? They've sold you a policy based on you doing behaving a certain way, and if you're not behaving that way, you should pay more.
Right. So if you use your ELD information and say, here's my ELD information, you can have it. I'll share it with you here to show that we are doing it right. We are monitoring drivers. If the driver has a problem, we coach them. We talk to them about it, because everybody can get in situations that have problems, and coupled with that with the event recorders. So now you're going to have to present a positive picture of your operation to get the preferred rates.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's the way of the future, and I've been saying it for a long time. I expect at some point everyone will have cameras, and the cameras will be watching, like the outward cameras will be watching live somewhere in some third world country overseas where labor is cheaper, and they'll have a guy in a room with 100 cameras, 100 screens in front of them watching.
Well, while we're on the subject of cameras, one of the big things that I do, and Tommy, you kind of hinted on it a little bit earlier. Sometimes, we buy the GPS units that has the camera built in, but you were saying that maybe we should go a step further, because a lot of times one of the other big things that I've noticed from a personal level is people can have dash cameras and things of that nature, but when it comes time to actually try to pull that footage back up, sometimes you don't even know how to properly operate the equipment so that you have that footage is even able to be recovered. I guess learning and knowing your equipment is one thing, but having a better type of equipment would probably lend itself to be a little bit better as far as the insurance situation is concerned, and even going back and reviewing accidents.
Rico, two things about that. First off, any camera is better than no camera. Okay. The
Right.
second one, the ones that you're talking about, they override each other. They get the chip full and this kind of stuff. So it is very limited. So if they have one, and you can get one for $150, $60, that's pretty good. That has a chip in it, which is a memory chip, like you have the phone. Every now and then, if you have an iPhone, you'll be told that you don't have any more storage. You have to buy a bigger
Right.
chip to have more storage. This is what we're talking about, how to store that stuff, but know how to use that part of it. And when you look at it, know how you can be able to replay it on the site to show the officer or not. The best way to do, though, is to have one that has both forward and back and using this third party provider. Yes, it costs some money, but think about it. So it costs $100 a year, $120 a year. What's your insurance cost? That part.
Yeah.
And can it save you those kind of dollars? Because those also, Rico, remind you of the things you're not doing right. I was listening to, again, the Road Dog show, and one of the drivers for Team America said he's an individual owner. He got one of these inward and outward facing cameras just to coach himself, to make sure he's driving safe. And he made a couple comments. It alerted me that I was too close. I didn't think I was, but when I looked at it, I wasn't. It reminded me that I was distracted because my eyes were off. Yeah, I was looking at something there. It reminds me to come back. So these are the reminders to operate within those rules that we all have a nature about knowing all the time, just to coach us back normally. Those are the positive part of it. To turn it around from negative, it's invading my privacy, to positive, to remind me to the things I'm doing that could lead to a crash, and second, prove or show that I'm doing everything right. And when a crash happens, to give me some defense that I am right here and I did not cause a crash. This is how we need to turn these cameras and these uses of cameras around from just a publicity standpoint. And I know what I'm saying is going to irritate a number of our listeners, but I'm just a picture's worth 1,000 words, and we just got to.
Tom, if you don't use all the tools that are available to you to do your job better, then you're a damn fool. And this is a tool that's available to everybody out there right now. And one of the things about trucking is you get your license, your CDL license, and you get a job, and you're out there. And after your, in most cases, after your original experience with a company trainer, you're put out there on the road yourself. Now, some of us can learn very well by watching others. And you see how other people behave, and you take your cue from them. Other ones don't, and they go into their own world. You may have some bad habits, and every time you exhibit those bad habits and nobody says anything, those bad habits are being reinforced. And if you're going to use that camera technology as a teaching method, you're going to be a much better driver. I think that's great news what that driver is doing.
Yeah, it's a coaching action. But let me tell you from an insurance standpoint, we recognize three phases in a trucker's life. I'm inexperienced. We need trainers. We need to come out to school. We need help that way. I'm experienced. But then you get complacent. And what underwriters are telling us now, anybody with some experience with all this technology is preferred with truckers that's been in business for a long time because of the complacency. Everybody needs to be reminded of this stuff. Just because you did it before doesn't mean you can get away with it now. This part of it. And this is part. So this is where underwriters are actually looking at more favorable here with this equipment and this driver assistant equipment and the coaching equipment, things to help the driver, remind the driver to drive as safe as possible, to coach them, to alert them for the problems that are happening, and to verify what happened. So this is where, from an insurance standpoint, where this becomes a positive return on your insurance premium by getting a preferred program versus one that doesn't have these other quirks.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense to me. These are tools available. I could see in the not too distant future, the insurance companies are just going to say, if you don't have a camera, we're not insuring you. Like, you're just a bad risk.
It's close to that now, Chuck, particularly for the ones that actually do underwriting. There's a few companies out there that don't do much underwriting. They just have a model and you do it and you pay into it, and the prices are usually higher than what the normal part of it is. So those are ones that in the marketplace that are not quite as the preferred ones who do actually real underwriting. But you're right. This is a very, very positive thing if you're willing to share your data and have all this equipment in there to help the driver and to verify what the driver is doing and how to coach the driver is a very positive thing. And you need to find an agent who will sell you to the insurance companies, to the
Yeah.
insurance
And you know what? You need to go to an insurance company. Um, the insurance company that's selling you the insurance or providing the insurance for you really needs to know trucking. I know a lot of the listeners um, have insurance companies that cover their farms and their livestock and all sorts of things because they're located in rural areas, and they'll run a couple of trucks, and they won't have an insurance provider that really knows trucks. And you really want somebody that knows trucks and trucking.
because when a crash happens, you got to have a specialist to
Yeah.
fix. And this is the reason that you would need this part of it. And price is the concern. I realize that insurance, Rico, it's the third most expensive thing you have beyond what that you eating and putting fuel in your truck.
Right.
Maybe you throw a little maintenance in there that might be a push on that stuff, but this is the thing that you do have some control of by making sure you're willing to operate safe and prove you are through this technology that we're talking about. This is this is what will distinguish you.
You know what? A lot of times, what will happen to companies is they'll have pressure. They can't get drivers, so rather than have the truck parked against the fence, they bring in somebody that they maybe normally wouldn't have hired. And I got to tell you, from my experience, a hell of a lot cheaper to let the truck sit against the fence.
That's the one that I mentioned, like the case where you're hiring a driver outside your own standards, and you just might as well add about 3 zeros to the crash.
Yep. Just, I realize how frustrating it is. You've got a banker calling you saying, where's my money? You got a truck sitting there parked against the fence. You got a customer is calling you saying, where's my truck? And first warm body that comes in, you throw them in the truck, and next thing you know, that customer's load is upside down in the middle of a highway. And the banker's saying, what are you going to do now?
Chuck, at this point, I don't want to. We're time wise, Rico. You're going to have to do this, but that's where driver retention is the key part. The other element for a trucking company, once you get over 4 or 5 drivers, is how long they've been there over a year. That's a demonstration of the safety. Is the ones who have experience with that insured, with that equipment. And so I encourage the truckers out there who are hiring drivers to think about what it costs to replace that driver. So give them all the
Oh my
benefit
God.
give them
Yeah.
all the benefit you can to keep them there. That's a positive thing from insurance.
Retention is so much more cost effective than recruitment.
Right.
That's something from all over, from the fact that you've got people working with you that, number one, understand your company culture. Number two, you know what you can expect from them. They know what they can expect from you. You have a good relationship with them. You show them respect. They respect you. And the insurance companies all over that one. I have enough conversations with insurance companies in 45 years where they say, we are always concerned when we go in and we see a huge turnover of drivers. Usually, huge turnover of drivers means a lot of other issues. Drivers do not want to leave good jobs.
Chuck, I had the privilege, and I just did it this week, uh, to be a judge in the truckload carriers safest fleet in the U.S. Safest fleet,
Right.
and actually 3 of the companies were Canadian companies, so it's North American,
Wow.
members of TCA. And the consistent part of it, all of it, one of them says our most important cargo is our drivers. One of them says is the driver is the captain of their ship. The
Yep.
driver, the driver is the most important part we have here, and we keep the driver happy. We give them bonuses for safe operation, not having a crash, using that data we have. We do this kind of things, and all of those have that consistency of the driver being the primary person they have to deal with in their companies. And then all of them had these other third party providers for the cameras and the technology and things like that. That was what was uniform for all these applicants. I read there were 9 applicants, and I read them all. And that was from the fleet with 25 to a fleet with 1,200. All was consistent in that area. How they trick the driver, the culture of safety, and the respect of the driver on the highway being the person who understood what was happening today and how they need to control the situation, not some dispatcher or some pressure by a shipper.
Yeah, there's so much truth to that, because your driver is the one that's going to make you or break you. If he or she is idling that truck, if they're driving, aggressively, there's going to be problems up the road.
Rico, thank you for showing. This is my foundation, folks, mcif.org. If you have any questions about insurance, I have nothing to sell. We're not for profit. I just can help you walk through this quagmire of insurance. Please, there's a place there, say, Ask Tommy. Type in there, or there's a number to call, and you can get a hold of me in there. Anytime you have any insurance questions, I'm more than willing to answer you. Or if you have a court case or things that you need to deal with. I mean, Chuck, you and I've talked a couple of times where we got a lawyer involved in a couple of things you needed to do real soon. So this is why we're here. This is what I'm giving back to the trucking industry, because it paid for my childhood and my college and everything else. It paid for things so I didn't have to be a truck driver. This was what somebody did.
Well, it's a great, it's a phenomenal industry, because it still does have, I know we don't have as strong a driver culture as we used to in the industry, because we brought in people from all different walks of life to drive trucks, where before it seemed to be more of a coveted job when I first got into it, and not that much stuff was moving by truck. There was a lot of stuff moving by train in those days, but our economies have grown so much that trucks need to do the work, and trucks are ubiquitous. I know that in front of our farm during the week, there's a truck about every 60 seconds. Drive by our laneway. So there's trucks all over. That has kind of done some damage to the culture somewhere, but we need to get back to fixing that culture and making it what it was. And I think that's what all of us are doing here, trying to make it improve the culture of the industry.
Rico, you know that Chuck knew some of my father's. Chuck, you remember Hambone?
Oh, yeah. I remember all those characters your dad had. Catfish was another one. Do you remember him?
Who?
A guy named Catfish.
Yeah, but Hambone's wife is still working for a restaurant across from the farmer's market in Fort Myers, and I see her about once or twice a month when I go by eat there. But the problem you've got, Chuck, and you hit the nail on the head. Think about getting a jury of 6 or 12 people between state or federal court, and those have not that can't get a job and think $6 a day is good pay. You got to realize who you sorted out of that, who are reading the $1 billion the thing that happened Sunday, the football players' money and what it costs to get a suite and all those kind of things for the Super Bowl part of it, the almost monopoly money. And then how many of those have been scared by a truck on the highway?
Of course.
And even though truck did anything right, the water coming up and spraying them, and and the big thing behind them too close, and that's what we're fighting. Just that, and every plaintiff attorney likes them because they know they got at least $1 million worth of coverage. They know they're probably doing something wrong, and the public doesn't like them. This is why we've got a real case that we have to make sure we have the documents to prove we are operating safe, we are doing things right, we are taking care of our drivers, and we're taking care of the public. That's the message we have. And the key word, Chuck, is be patient. Rico, I know you drive every day, but I think you agree with me. Patience is the big key here. You cannot.
Absolutely.
You cannot be in a hurry with an 80,000-pound missile that you cannot change its direction easly.
Absolutely. You got to be patient, and it boggles the mind. When it kills me, like a lot of times people really don't have an appreciation for what it is that truckers have to endure out here on the roads. And when
Zero.
they see dash cam footage and things of that nature, and they see, it really, I say it to myself out loud. I like, people just really are willing to gamble with their lives like this in front of, they really are taking every day, putting their lives at risk with some of the things that they do around trucks. It just it's absolutely crazy.
Right.
I think we've done a bad job, Rico, as an industry, educating the public. We are every bit as much to blame for not educating the public. We've got enough organizations, nonprofit organizations that are adversary groups for us that aren't doing enough. And the result is, this is kind of funny. Trucking it's not funny, it's sad. Trucking has become the third most dangerous job in the United States. And this is with all the seat belts and the and the dash pads and everything else, padded dashboards and the balloons and everything else that come out at you. And it's still become that much more dangerous compared to years ago. And I've got 4 old trucks, and they have no creature comforts. As a matter of fact, 2 of them don't even have seat belts. And it was metal dashboards, okay,
Yeah.
no airbags, God forbid. And, the brakes are not great on them, no power steering. These
No
things
front brakes either, because
well, yeah,
guy.
that's right. We used to, some trucks I had a 66 Mac. My first truck didn't have front brakes.
Yeah.
There were no front brakes on that truck at all. And some of them have front brake eliminators, where you take off the front brake if it's raining, because they said back then you don't want front brakes. It's more dangerous now to drive these things, brand new ones, a 2024 that's worth $200,000 or something today than it was to drive a $20,000 truck in 1964. Doesn't that say a lot?
Unfortunate.
Yeah. So we really need to get out there and educate the public. We've got 53-foot billboards that we're all pulling. We need to maybe put some advertising on them. Do you realize how much,
on this truck could be your supper tomorrow night, or
yes,
on this truck will be the something to keep your clothes clean, or
please, we're doing the best we can. We've got tomorrow's dinner on board. We've got tomorrow's, we've got the blood for the hospital on board, whatever it is. I don't think you want to go but into too much detail. But we have your medicine on board.
Well, I as you know, Chuck, a couple of weeks ago, I was snow skiing, and I was trying to explain to some people of what I did, and that's tough to do since I'm the only one that does this part. They're out of Minnesota that way, and I said, this trucking industry, could you believe we have to pass a federal law to allow a trucker to use the bathroom? I mean, that's ridiculous, and actually has to happen. This is how abusive the trucking industry has been. Part of it's our own. Part of it's because we don't clean up after ourselves in the yards and this kind of stuff, policing our own debris and this kind of stuff. But
that's culture. That's a cultural thing, and where we've got to teach people coming in. You do not do that, but it upsets me all the time. I get on, I'm on Instagram and I see stuff, where somebody's having a bad day or somebody's new at it and they back the trailer in the wrong way and all this stuff. And they love to pick on one company, and it's a training company. And I'll say it out loud, it's Swift. They're a training company. They give people their chance. They take somebody that's never driven a truck before, and in 8 or 12 weeks, they turn them out loose. And those people are going to make mistakes just like we all do. But today, we're so fast to capture those mistakes on a camera, where years ago, when you saw somebody making a mistake, I know when I was making a mistake, somebody came out and said, here's how you do it correctly. They didn't take movies of me and then put it on national TV, which is basically Instagram.
I tell you, it's some other companies out here that's starting to give Swift a run for their money. When it comes to some of the things that you see out here, but it definitely it just comes down to being a decent human being. I mean, you gotta some of the stuff that we do that I've seen that we have been guilty of is, you wouldn't want anybody leaving stuff like that on your property. Why would you do it why would you leave that on somebody else's property? And it just comes down to just having a little bit of you know, just as they say, taking it back to we're recording this on Sunday, taking it back to Sunday school. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The golden rule.
Bingo. Exactly.
It's not that difficult to just do what you would want to have done to you. And with that being said, I'm looking at the time. Tommy, is there anything new or different that may be coming down from an insurance perspective that you want to make us aware of, or anything, or is it pretty much kind of status quo at this time?
Well, unfortunately, Rico, as I mentioned earlier to you and this stuff, the new markets that came in, the provide insurance to 18 wheelers has not been successful. And I see even more of a shrinking of the ability to buy insurance, particularly with the smaller motor carriers, this part. So it's important for them to picture themselves and position themselves to be favorable, doing everything right, and then select an agent, hopefully one that has the TRS designation. People are part of our foundation. If you need some referrals, let us know, who understand their business. If they don't understand what bobtail deadhead means, you got to get somewhere else. If they don't know what the spot market is, you got to go somewhere else. If they don't know the language, you just have to get someone who's willing to sell you to somebody else, not just someone who's selling a commodity. This is not a commodity. It's a piece of paper that says if something happens, we'll indemnify you. We'll pay on your behalf or repair your equipment for these dollars. And so you want to make sure you got the right coverage and make sure they're covering your operation. And the most important coverage that you have to select is cargo. We can preach at this, and I know Hank and I have been in this discussion, cargo. That's the most important coverage you buy because that's going to affect your relationship with your shipper, your broker, and that's the one you can make the most mistakes of because it's not all common. It's not all the same. I mean, if you're hauling food goods, you cannot have one that has a spoilage exclusion in it. If you're hauling flatbeds, you got to have something that doesn't avoid coverage if the load gets wet that's not tarped. You just have to have these kind of things, and there's not a right policy. Auto liability is common. If it's auto's covered, means it's listed on the policy, the driver's qualified, we're going to pay. And all of them pay the same. Cargo, there's so many wrinkles, and it could put out of your business because now you factor it. Now the customer gets satisfied, and you sign an agreement with a broker that says that if we don't pay that claim, we'll take all the money we owe you and hold it there. Right. I'm dealing with one in Texas who lost, who had trying to help, who had a exclusion for electronics, and it was parts to microwave that burned up. Had nothing to do with theft, but $75,000 lost, and the broker said you signed an agreement, and they're holding $75,000 of their money that's 5 truck unit had hauled for that broker, and that money was factored. So now the factoring company is going against their own insured to recover that $75,000. I mean,
man, that's another.
I mean, it's a dog's breakfast. But, you need to. I always made a point if we got a customer or even a load of something we were not familiar with, I would phone the insurance company just to make sure, am I covered for this? And sometimes there was an exclusion. The insurance company said, no way. I said, well, we're stuck somewhere. And this is years and years ago when we would get stuck somewhere. And I would buy a rider for that one trip just to make sure we were covered. Because
and the thing that you got to realize is that cargo pricing is not big gaps between what is the bare minimum certificate insurance to cover what you have. You're not talking about spending more than a couple $300 more to get everything covered that you need. But there's not a right policy, not a wrong policy. Does it fit you? If you're a flatbed operation, I don't care if you got a spoilage exclusion in it. I don't care if you have a temperature exclusion in it. But if you're a food hauler, you got to have that.
That's right. Exactly.
And
a flatbed operator doesn't need reefer breakdown.
Right.
Not as a rule.
Yeah. And those are the kind of things that you got to pay attention to. Again, have the right agent. I didn't mean in the last few minutes of the program to Rico to bring up the most hot subject of all that we talked about on this area. But you asked me the question, and that's that's the place that if you want to be the most selective, is you got to explain everything you hauling to your cargo carrier, to your agent who's buying cargo, and you need to ask them, now, what am I not covered for? You need to ask them a question. What kind of cargo am I not covered for? And get that in some kind of correspondence with them.
Tom, I want to just clarify one thing for our listeners here, because there seems to be, people are going through tough times right now in trucking, along with other businesses. And when you're in tough times, you've got to figure out how to stay afloat. And some of it is cost cutting, but you want to cut your costs without bringing on problems for yourself. If some of our listeners are looking at maybe replacing their insurance company and looking at other insurance companies, can you just go over a minute the acceptable ratings that somebody should consider before they change insurance companies?
You mean the financial rating?
Yes, sir. That's really important.
Yeah, the financial rating is it's called a best rating, and anything a B plus or more above is good. Anything less than that is not. So you'd want to do that. Most of the companies writing trucking is A minus to A or A minus, that part of it here. You also got to determine if there's standard coverage or not, and that's if you're writing admitted or not admitted, which is a whole different subject you have here. But just make sure that you're getting the standard policies and that you have an insurance company that is rated at least B plus.
Okay.
Good deal. Well, funny about. Let me bring Tommy back in. He popped out. He popped out on us again, but he popped right back.
There he is, top dog again.
The thing about it is, I want to thank Tommy for taking time out of his schedule to come on and join us. We're recording this on a Sunday morning, actually Super Bowl Sunday. So we're getting it out of the way so that everybody can kick back and watch the big game, I guess you could say. But we definitely want to thank Tommy for taking time out of his schedule to come on and join us to kind of break all this stuff down. We definitely appreciate it. Much needed, very valuable information. Hopefully everyone learned something from it. And like Tommy was saying earlier, and I'm going to reiterate, right below Chuck, we have his website scrolling on the ticker. You can click on that website, go to his website there. There's a tab there that says Ask Tommy. If you have any questions, anything that we didn't get a chance to cover tonight, that you got a specific question that you want to throw over at Tommy, that's the place to do it. That's how you can get in contact with him over there on that website. So definitely, please, by all means, if you have any question, it's something that you don't know about, insurance related, Tommy is definitely the man to go to and ask that question and get you a correct answer. Much better than lunch counter information that you get at the truck stop. So, with that being said, Chuck, let the good people know how they can get a hold of you, and we'll get ready to park this baby and put a bow on it.
Yeah. Listen, if any of our listeners need anything whatsoever, they need a little bit of help trying to get through these tough times, please reach out to me. Best way is send me an email with your phone number to chucksnow280@outlook.com. Put your phone number on it. I'll help you any way I can. We're getting close to, we're just about 5 weeks away from Matt's. I don't know whether some of our listeners are going down there. I'll certainly be down there. I won't be working the traffic's booth this year because there won't be one. They've decided not to do it, but I will be at the Next Gen trucking booth for a while. So reach out if you're going to be down in Louisville, and maybe we can meet up for a coffee. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week. Tommy, I want to thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners do.
Well, I love the trucking industry. I want to make it as easy as can, and understand insurance is kind of tough to understand. I understand that, but also love and understand the trucking industry.
I'm with you, brother.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you guys, the listeners and the viewers. We appreciate you so much. If you would do us a huge favor, if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the little bell icon. That gets you notified whenever we post new content. If you found anything that we shared today helpful, informative at all, please like, share, and subscribe to the video. Share it, send it out to somebody that could this may be useful to them. And by all means, we appreciate it. We want you guys to stay safe out there, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise. God bless you, and good night.
Catch on a flip-flop. God bless.
Thanks again, Tommy.